So I did my psychosocialization project over sexism. I talked about how I faced sexism growing up and how it affected me as a person. I decided to talk to you today. This is my friend from high school. Um, about how you have faced sexism throughout your schooling. I know that you are also an elementary education major. You went to Missouri Southern State University.
Mm-hmm.
But back in high school, we were both in FTA, Future Teachers of America, together. So that's how we became close friends. So, thinking back to high school, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Did you have any experiences in high school that were related to sexism?
I would say so. I mean, all through high school, I was interested in teaching. At some point in there, I decided that I was interested in elementary school, and as you could imagine, there were a lot of people who had ideas about that and were not really thrilled because, as a male, that's not really like a normal thing for me to go into. Um, there were a lot of my friends that thought it was kind of funny that that was something I wanted to go into, and it wasn't a manly kind of career or anything. There were a lot of teachers who, when they asked me what I was interested in, they didn't really seem all that impressed when that was what I told them, and there weren't a lot of them that directly said things to me that like I shouldn't go into it or something like that, but it was just the small things that you kind of pick up on, and there was definitely plenty of that.
Mm-hmm. So, going back to high school, when and how did you decide that you wanted to become an elementary school teacher despite all that?
So for most of my life, I've been interested in teaching. I had a lot of really good teachers as I grew up, and I, I didn't really ever decide like I specifically wanted to teach this age. When you're in high school, you still have a lot of that stuff to figure out anyway. But basically, when I was surrounded by other high school students, I was pretty sure that I didn't want to teach high school, and I I had younger siblings, and I would help them with school sometimes. And I kind of enjoyed it. It wasn't always great. They were my siblings, but I figured that it would be better with other people's kids and in more of a teaching role, and so that kind of pushed me toward elementary education. And the more I thought about it, the more it seemed like it would be a good fit. I thought they seemed like a pretty fun age group.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, a lot of your reasons are the same reasons that I decided that I wanted to become a teacher too, but I know it's different since you are a male going into this field. So, did you perceive a stereotype about men being in elementary education, and did that make it harder for you to make that decision?
I I would say I definitely did notice a stereotype. I mean, when I was going through elementary school, I had mostly female teachers. I think there may have been like one male teacher in my elementary school, and back then I didn't really think that much about it. It just kind of seemed like that's kind of how it is. There are just girl teachers when you're in school, but then as I got older and that was something that I was interested in, I started to really notice that there weren't a lot of male elementary teachers, and that a lot of people just didn't really think that that was the right role for men to be in, and it made me question my decision a lot of times, but I decided to look past it because it was something that interested me, and I felt like that was the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. With your family members, I know we feel a lot of pressure from them. How did your family members and friends feel about you choosing this specific career path?
Yeah, that's kind of like what I was talking about earlier, where none of them really specifically said that I shouldn't be an elementary school teacher, but when I brought it up with my parents and told them that that was really what I was thinking, they obviously encouraged me to do whatever I wanted, but I could, I just felt like I could tell that they had something else in mind for me, that it maybe wasn't really their dream for me to be an elementary teacher. And my parents care about me a lot, so like I said, they were going to support whatever I wanted to go into, but I think they had other ideas. And the same with my friends. I don't have any male friends that wanted to go into teaching, so none of them really understood why that's something I would want to do.
Mm-hmm. I know that we were both in FTA together, and you were the only guy in the club.
That's
Did that
true.
affect you in any way, being the only guy in the club?
It was kind of weird sometimes. I got used to it after a while, but especially like freshman year, just walking into that, and it's already like this new club, and that's kind of scary on its own. And then I was just the only guy in there, and I don't know if I would say I was surprised. I mean, by the time I was a freshman in high school, I had kind of started to understand that that's kind of how it is with teaching, especially at younger ages. But um, I mean, everyone made me feel welcome. Nobody made it really awkward, but I mean, to a degree, it did kind of feel weird, and it kind of continued later in high school. I also did the Go Caps program, which was just like a pre-professional program for future teachers essentially, and I was once again the only guy in that program, and
Yeah.
that was that was my senior year of high school, so nothing had really changed during those 4 years. I was still in the same position basically, but in that one, it kind of took it to another level because we were actually going to classrooms and like having teachers and principals come talk to us about what it's like to be a teacher. And with all that came almost more questions and kind of quizzical looks from those teachers and principals when they would come in there, and they almost seemed surprised that I was in this program. And you know again, they wouldn't say anything directly to my face, but it was almost like it made sense to them that all the girls would be there and that they would be in this program. But when I was there, they had to think about it for a second and questioned whether that was really like if I was actually there because it was in the program or if I was doing something else. And the kids, how kids are, they don't really hold much back, and they all had questions and also just seemed to question why I was there a lot.
Mm-hmm. So now being in college, I wanted to ask you about now since you're there, since you're at a different university as me. Um, have you seen a difference in how you're treated as a male in elementary education now that you're in college with professors that are teaching you those specific things to actually be a teacher?
Yeah, I mean, I know now, like, since I'm in college, an elementary education major. I'm not a high schooler saying, oh, I think I would like to teach. It's like, I am,
You're actually making
I'm,
that decision.
I'm actually on that track now. Like, that is the real end goal. And, once again, I guess now I'm not the only guy in the whole program. I think there might be like one other one in the teaching
Yeah.
program, but it's still kind of the same deal. There are a lot of females, and it's definitely they're definitely the majority. But I feel like in a lot of ways it's still the same. I'm still treated in the same way of like, oh, you can be here, but people are still a little surprised when they see me or when I tell them that that's my major. Um, but I've had a few occasions where professors or even like my academic advisor where they didn't want to tell me that I shouldn't be an elementary school teacher, but they've made comments about, oh, are you sure you wouldn't want to consider a different grade and maybe like being a high school teacher or going into administration or something? Are you sure that wouldn't be something that you'd be more interested in? And I know that I'm sure from their perspective they thought that they were being helpful and that they were making this good suggestion because they thought that it would be a better fit or something. But I whether they realized it or not, they really were they were basing that off the fact that I'm a male in this major. And it, even though they teach in that area and they really should be encouraging, everybody to go into it, they still, kind of deep down have this idea that it's just not really the best place for male students, and that they're, could be things that are a better fit for that. So it's been interesting. I've still enjoyed it. There are a lot of good parts, but things like that definitely come up.
Yeah, so when things like that come up and professors and people that you respect are giving you those suggestions, have you ever considered changing your major based on that sexism that you are encountering?
It's definitely crossed my mind. I mean, I've had classes with some of these professors, and like I said, even my academic advisor has mentioned things along those lines, and that's the person who's really supposed to be looking out for what your college track is and what you end up doing. And in a way, I'm like, in college, I'm a college student. I shouldn't know better than these people. So like, if they think that I'd be a better fit in more of an administrative role or in some other age group, I started to think maybe they're right. Maybe I should change it. And when I really thought about it, I teaching elementary school is what really sounded good to me, and that I felt like that was what was most important. So I haven't changed my major. I don't plan on changing it, but it took a while to, kind of get over what those people were saying and make that decision for myself.
Mm-hmm. I have another question. I know you mentioned earlier the students being brutally honest and open about what they say, and I know they are too when I've been in different classrooms with practicums and stuff like that. So during your student teaching and practicums, have any of the children shown any form of sexism toward you being a male and coming into their classroom?
Yeah, as you said, children are blunt. They pretty much just say whatever's on their mind, and there have been quite a few times that I've gone into classrooms, and I've heard from like females that are in this same program that they go in and the kids just assume that they're like the TAs and stuff like that, and it's just not really questioned. But usually when I go into a classroom, the kids don't really assume that, and
Mm-hmm.
they wonder, what I'm doing there, and they like to ask if I am planning on being a teacher and stuff, because that just seems weird to them, because a lot of them have only had female teachers, and in their little bubble, because they haven't experienced a lot of the world, that just seems like how it should be to them. And
Mm-hmm.
they've said a lot of things that definitely show that in their minds it makes more sense for girls to be teachers.
Mm-hmm. So here's a big question. Why do you think this stereotype that men shouldn't be elementary school teachers and women should be, and that's just natural, why do you think that exists?
I think, a lot of it, I think, just goes back really far into history, and the roles that different genders were assigned, back in the past. And to a degree, I think we haven't really moved on from that, and women are still seen as being better suited for jobs like teaching, or being clerks or things like that, and men are seen as being better at the math and science type jobs. And I feel like nowadays we know that that's not really true, and that there's not really like an actual divide there, but parts of it are still left behind with people. And for whatever reason, people still seem to think that men aren't really supposed to be very good with kids. They're not really supposed to like care to take care of children and stuff, and that men would rather just leave that to the women or something. And it's not really true. Men also care about children, and we can want to teach children and want to take care of them and do those kind of jobs too. But people just don't really think of that, and people feel like that's wrong for some reason.
Yeah. Well, with you saying that, do you have any ideas on how our education system, going back to the children, how we should fix this problem of sexism in career choices?
Yeah, so I think the education system does play a big role in it because there's a lot of things that we experience throughout our education that push us toward what we end up doing in the future. Obviously, there are parts of it that come from your family and friends and stuff, and I think it's important that families and your parents, teach kids that they can go into whatever they want and try to instill this idea that we shouldn't be sexist on anything. Um, but as far as the education system, I feel like there's a lot of stuff that goes on when kids are, a lot of times when kids are so young that they're just throwing out ideas of stuff that they want to do in the future. And some of it isn't even realistic, but they're young enough that, you should just kind of let them think those things. And, sometimes they'll have those tests that'll tell kids what they would be a good fit for in the future. And personally, I think that at the ages that they usually do those, there's not nearly enough to actually even give a reasonable idea of what they would be good at in the future. And there's no real reason that they should have to know because they have a long time to figure that out. And I think that we shouldn't really focus on things like that when kids are younger because all it really is going to do is discourage kids from the dreams that they might have. And it can really only do harm. And I think that teachers like ourselves, when we're teaching kids in the future, it'll be important for us to encourage the kids in whatever it is that they want to do. And when they talk about these dreams that they have, to never say things like, oh, but you could probably do something better, or, you know, oh, that could be interesting, maybe. Like, I don't know if that would be the best fit for you. And, just let them think what they want to and encourage them and everything, because that's the only way we're going to fix things like this, not
That
trying to
is
separate
true.
people.
When you're a teacher, being a male teacher in the position, you might, because we've just talked about all this stuff, you might be the only male teacher in the school. How are you going to feel if you hear another little boy talking about how they want to be a teacher and other students are doing the same things they did to you growing up?
I I would like to think that I'll intervene in that situation and not like yell at anybody or get mad at the kids or anything, but just kind of stop them while they're having that conversation and be like, look at me.
Mm-hmm.
Right here. I'm a teacher. I'm a male, and I did it. I'm happy that I did. There's nothing wrong with it, and just kind of without not try to get them in trouble or anything because
They're
it's
just
not
not
always their fault.
educated.
Yeah, they're young enough that most of that stuff's coming from their parents or other
Mm-hmm.
influences on their life, but just try to explain to them that there's really nothing wrong with that. And if that boy wants to be a teacher, then I'll show him all the support that I can give.
Yeah.
And tell them that they should do the same. So
All right. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today. I'm excited that you're going to be a teacher. I feel like you would be a great colleague and a good example to everybody to follow your dream, no matter if you're a boy or a girl. Like, that does not decide what kind of career you would be better at doing. So, thank you for talking to me today about sexism.
of course, yeah.